Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time.
Today we're looking at a mechanism, a really massive, sprawling, industrial-scale mechanism that I think most of us only ever see from the outside.
We're doing a structural analysis of the American legal and carceral system.
And our schematic for this, our guide, is a text that has been banned, seized, and passed around in the underground for decades. It's Assata, an autobiography by Assata Shakur.
And we should probably get this out of the way right up top. We need to address the elephant in the room.
Or maybe the panther in the room.
Right. Assata Shakur is an incredibly polarizing figure. I mean, depending on who you ask, she's either a folk hero of the Black liberation struggle,
Or she's a cop-killing domestic terrorist on the FBI's most wanted list.
there's a $2 million bounty on her head right now, as we're speaking.
Which is fascinating in itself. The state of New Jersey, at one point, actually petitioned the Pope John Paul II to intervene.
To extradite her from Cuba.
To help extradite her from Cuba? That's the level of, symbolic weight this one person carries. But, and this is so crucial for our deep dive today, we are not here to do a biography.
No.
We aren't here to do a true crime episode.
Exactly. This is not a book review, and it is absolutely not a moral adjudication of Assata Shakur's life. We're not sitting here as a jury to determine, guilt or innocence for the specific crimes she was accused of back in the 70s.
That's a completely different show.
Our mission here is to treat this text as a data set. We're looking at Assata as a first-person case study of institutional design.
The incentives within that design.
And its persistence, how it keeps going.
Yeah, we're really trying to strip away the personality cult, both the hero worship on one side and the total demonization on the other.
To look at the machine.
To look at the machine that's described in these pages. And when you read the book through that very specific lens, a very cold structural thesis emerges.
And the argument isn't just that the system is racist or mean. It's more mechanical than that.
It's much more structural. The thesis, really, is that the American carceral system functions not just as a tool for punishment, but as a stabilizing mechanism for the entire political and economic order.
A stabilizing force. Okay,
Yeah.
That's the key idea. So it's not a malfunction.
It's the operating system. It's working as intended.
To really unpack that, we've broken our analysis down into a roadmap. We're going to start by looking at system design.
Specifically, the inputs of race, class, and education.
Then we're going to move to the incentives, how power and profit are maintained through things like policing and the media.
And finally, we'll look at the outcomes, which in this case means containment, incarceration, and crucially, narrative control.
It's a whole trajectory, really.
It absolutely is. It takes us from an elementary school classroom all the way to a maximum security solitary confinement cell, and it maps the logic that connects those two places.
So let's start at the beginning. Part 1, structural inputs.
Right. And inputs is definitely the right word, because Shakur starts her story in childhood, but she doesn't write it like a diary.
No, it's not my feelings. It's more like she's an anthropologist.
Yeah, observing a hostile culture. And she has this unique perspective because she splits her time between the segregated South Wilmington, North Carolina, and what was then called the integrated North in New York City.
And this comparison she does between the North and South is, I think, one of the most brilliant parts of the book.
It really is. Because it just dismantles this very common American myth. This idea that, the South was the bad, racist place and the North was the good, free place.
And she argues they were just.
Two different management styles for the same system.
Let's talk about the South first, then. This is the 1950s. Jim Crow is the law of the land.
And she describes it so vividly. The colored signs sitting at the back of the bus. There's this one scene that really, really stuck with me where she talks about the pure humiliation of travel.
Right, they're on a road trip and they need to use a restroom.
But no gas station will let them.
Yeah.
And she describes having to squat in the bushes on the side of the highway while cars are just whizzing by.
It's a visceral, physical degradation.
Totally. The system in the South was overt. The boundary was crystal clear. You knew exactly where the line was because if you crossed it, you faced immediate physical or legal violence.
But, and this is the interesting part, she describes a certain kind of safety in that clarity.
How so?
She talks about her community in Wilmington. Her teachers were Black. The people running the local businesses were all Black. There was a buffer zone,
Just sense of community.
Yes. Her teachers were incredibly strict, but she says they were strict because they loved them. They were trying to armor these kids for a world that was actively trying to crush them.
So the colored school was almost like a fortress.
Exactly. But then she moves to New York, she goes to an integrated school in Queens, and on paper, this is supposed to be progress. This is the land of the free.
But what she finds there is arguably even more psychologically damaging.
This is where she coins that term, the little nigga grin.
I wanted to spend a minute on this because it's such a devastatingly precise image.
The little nigga grin.
It's her term for the behavior of the white liberal teachers and authority figures she meets in the North. She describes these teachers who would smile at her, who would speak with this, sticky, sugary sweetness.
They'd pat her on the head.
They'd pat her on the head, but there was no substance behind it. Unlike her teachers in the South who really pushed her to be excellent, these teachers expected absolutely nothing from her.
It's the soft bigotry of low expectations, weaponized.
It is. She talks about being the only black kid in her class and feeling like a specimen in a zoo. The teacher smiles, but the curriculum completely erases her history and her people.
The teacher smiles, but when the bell rings, Assata goes back to a ghettoized neighborhood, and the teacher goes home to the suburbs.
And that's the core distinction she makes. In the South, the mechanism of control was the law. Explicit signs, explicit rules.
In the North, the mechanism was economics and psychology.
That grin masked the fact that she was being structurally excluded just as effectively as she was in Wilmington. She realizes the North is just as segregated, but it's done through things like rent prices and school district lines instead of whites-only signs.
And this leads to her big aha moment about education itself.
Right. She realizes school isn't just about learning facts, it's about learning a narrative. And the biggest narrative she starts to deconstruct is the one about the American Civil War.
This is a really pivotal moment in her intellectual development.
It is, because we're all taught the standard narrative, right? Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, the noble North marching south as moral crusaders to free the slaves because slavery was evil.
That South was the villain. It's a morality play, good guys versus bad guys.
Exactly. But Shakur, she goes to the library, she starts reading beyond the school textbook.
Okay.
And that's when she finds what we could call the systems narrative.
What does that look like?
She discovers that Lincoln was not, in her reading, a moral abolitionist. She cites his own writings where he states pretty clearly that if he could save the Union without freeing a single slave, he would do it.
She finds his proposals to deport black people to South America or Africa.
All of it. And she realizes the war wasn't about human rights. It was about economic dominance.
It was industrial capitalism versus the agrarian slave economy.
Precisely. The North was industrializing. They needed a unified national market. They needed a mobile labor force that could move to the factories. The Southern slave economy was a rival economic system that was holding back Northern capital.
So the argument the book makes is that abolition was basically a business decision.
Yes, the North didn't free the slaves because they loved black people. They freed the slaves to break the South's economic back and consolidate their own power.
And just think about the implication of that for a young student. I mean, if you believe the standard narrative, you believe the state is ultimately benevolent.
You believe the government fixes its mistakes because it's fundamentally good.
But if you accept Shakur's system's narrative, you realize that the state only acts when it serves the economic interests of the ruling class.
It completely reframes her entire existence. She stops looking for a savior in the government and starts looking at the government as a competitor, as an adversary.
Which feeds directly into her analysis of capitalism itself.
Yes, and she uses this metaphor of the ladder that I think is so potent.
The ladder of success. It's the American ethos, right? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, climb the ladder.
But Shakur stops and actually interrogates the geometry of a ladder. A ladder is a vertical structure. By definition, for there to be a top, there must be a bottom.
You can't have a ladder where everyone is on the top rung.
The structure would just collapse. It wouldn't be a ladder anymore.
So her argument then is that capitalism requires poverty. It's not an unfortunate byproduct. It's a design feature of the system.
Yes. For there to be owners, there must be workers. For there to be rich, there must be poor. And in the specific American context, she argues that race is the sorting mechanism the system uses to decide who gets stuck at the bottom of that ladder.
So racism isn't just, personal prejudice or hate.
It's a tool. It's the tool that keeps the bottom rung populated so the whole ladder can stand up straight.
That is a foundational shift in perception. I mean,
Yeah.
if you see poverty as a personal failure like, I just didn't climb hard enough, you blame yourself.
You internalize the failure.
But if you see poverty as a structural requirement, The ladder needs someone at the bottom, and the system has designated me and my people for that role. Then you don't try to climb the ladder anymore.
You try to burn the ladder down.
And that's the moment, right? That's when Assata Shakur moves from being an observer of the system to being an activist against it.
She joins the Black Panther Party. She eventually joins the Black Liberation Army. She makes a conscious decision to try and dismantle the structure.
And this is where the system shifts gears. It stops trying to educate her with the little nigga grin.
And it starts trying to neutralize her.
This brings us to part 2, the apparatus of suppression. And we have to start with COINTELPRO.
COINTELPRO, the FBI's counterintelligence program. And it's so important to state this clearly. This is not a conspiracy theory.
No, these are declassified government documents. This is historical fact. You can look them up.
And the mandate, the directive from J. Edgar Hoover, was incredibly specific. The goal was to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, and otherwise neutralize Black nationalist organizations.
Just listen to those verbs: disrupt, neutralize.
This wasn't law enforcement in the traditional sense. This was warfare, domestic warfare.
And Shakur describes the tactics so vividly in the book. It wasn't just guys in trench coats, watching from across the street with binoculars.
No, they were active agents of chaos. They would write forged letters, signing them as if they were members of the Panthers, and send them to rival groups to start street wars.
They would create inflammatory cartoons insulting the leadership of different groups to provoke infighting and violence.
They manufacture paranoia. Shakur writes about the immense psychological toll of never knowing who in the room was a Fed. You couldn't trust your friends, you couldn't trust your phone.
The goal was to make the movement implode from the inside.
Since the police wouldn't even have to shoot anyone, though they were more than happy to do that too.
And the media, according to the book, played a massive role in this. I think we often have this view of the media as a separate entity, the fourth estate, that's supposed to be a check on power.
But Shakur maps out this feedback loop where the media essentially acts as the PR department for the police.
She calls it the mechanism of criminalization.
And the most glaring example in the text is the Target Blue article that was published in New York Magazine.
This was a pivotal moment. The article came out before she was ever convicted of the major crimes she became famous for.
And it described the Black Liberation Army as cop killers, fanatics, mad dogs. And it specifically singled out Assata Shakur, who is then known as Joanne Chesimard, as the mother hen of this group.
Mother hen! I mean, it's such a loaded, misogynistic,
and demonizing image. It paints her as the matriarch of a murder cult. It completely strips away any political context. The free breakfast programs for children, the housing initiatives, the anti-poverty work.
All of that gets erased, and the entire movement is reduced to just one thing: cop killers.
And the practical application of this was the wanted posters. This part of the story is just wild.
Okay, so there was a bank robbery.
A bank robbery happens. The FBI immediately puts out a poster saying, "Wanted for bank robbery, Joanne Chesimard," and they plaster it everywhere. Subways, banks, post offices, it's all over the city.
But here's the glitch in the matrix.
The woman in the bank surveillance photo was not her.
It wasn't her?
It wasn't even a close resemblance. When she eventually went to trial for that specific robbery, she was acquitted. The jury literally looked at the photo, looked at her, and said, "That is clearly a different woman."
But the acquittal came years later. The poster had already done its work.
The public had already seen her face over and over under the word wanted. The association was made.
It's pre-adjudication in the public sphere. By the time she ever stepped foot into a courtroom for anything, the average citizen on the street already knew she was a dangerous criminal.
The media had already convicted her in the court of public opinion.
And that serves a very specific systemic function, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It legitimizes state violence. If the public believes she is a mad dog cop killer, then the police can do anything they want to catch her.
They can kick down doors, they can shoot on sight.
And the public will applaud. They'll see it as the police protecting them from a monster that the media created.
And all of that violence, that whole dynamic, culminates in the New Jersey Turnpike incident of 1973.
Right. And for our purposes, we're not going to get lost in the weeds of the ballistics and the forensics. That's a whole rabbit hole of its own.
But the basic facts are, she's in a car with two friends, they get pulled over by state troopers, and shots are fired.
In the end, Assata is shot and severely wounded. Her friend Zaid Shakur is killed, and a state trooper, Werner Forster, is also killed.
But the scene I want to focus on, the scene the book really lingers on, is the aftermath.
In the hospital.
Yes. She's rushed to the hospital. She's critically wounded. One arm is paralyzed. Her lungs are filling with fluid. She is handcuffed to the bed.
And guarding her is a New Jersey state trooper who, according to her account, proceeds to psychologically torture her.
She identifies him as having Nazi sympathies. She says he was wearing paraphernalia.
Hmm.
And he gives her this speech that feels like it's straight out of a dystopian novel.
It's this long, rambling monologue about civilization. He's standing over this bleeding, dying black woman, and he's lecturing her about the Roman Empire and the Greek Empire.
He tells her that white people created symphonies and operas and mathematics.
And he asks her with just genuine contempt, did you ever hear of a nigger writing a symphony?
It's so jarring. I mean, she's literally bleeding out, and he's there fighting a culture war over her bed.
But it's so revealing, isn't it? It reveals the mindset of the enforcer. To him, this isn't a traffic stop that went tragically wrong.
This is a civilizational struggle.
He sees himself as a Roman centurion guarding the gates of the empire against the barbarians. In his eyes, Shakur isn't a U.S. citizen with constitutional rights.
She's an enemy combatant, an existential threat to white civilization.
And that dehumanization is what allows him to, as she describes it, poke her wounds, deny her pain medication, threaten her. If she's an animal in your mind, you don't have to treat her like a human being.
And that attitude doesn't just stop at the hospital door.
No, it walks right into the courtroom with her.
Which brings us to part 3, the judicial theater. And she is very, very deliberate in calling it theater.
She calls it the theater of the absurd, because we have the civic ideal of the court as like a neutral laboratory where truth with a capital T is discovered.
But she argues it's a sage play where the ending has already been written. The trial is just the performance.
And you can see that in the jury selection process. This is supposed to be a jury of your peers.
But the trial venue was moved. It was changed to a conservative, overwhelmingly white county where her peers were people who had been reading the Target Blue articles for years.
People who had seen those wanted posters in their post office.
So her peers were actually her frantic ideological opposites.
But the legal mechanism that really blew my mind when I read this was the concept of opening the door. I think we need to explain this clearly because it's the procedural trap that completely silenced her.
Okay, so it's a rule of court procedure.
It's a procedural rule.
Right.
Shakur wanted to testify. She wanted to take the stand in her own defense and explain why she was so terrified of the police that night.
She wanted to explain the context?
Exactly. She wanted to tell the jury that she knew about COINTELPRO, that she knew her friends and Collier had been assassinated by law enforcement, and that when the trooper pulled them over with his gun drawn, she believed she was about to be executed on the side of the road.
She wanted to provide the political context for her fear.
But her lawyers explained the trap to her. If she took the stand and mentioned her political background or her revolutionary state of mind to explain that fear, she would be opening the door.
Opening the door to what?
To character evidence. The prosecution would then be allowed to back a truck up to the courthouse and just dump in everything they had on her.
So irrelevant material.
Completely irrelevant to the actual shooting. They could introduce revolutionary pamphlets they found in her apartment, guerrilla warfare manuals, inflammatory speeches she'd given. They could say, look, she admits she's a revolutionary, and here is a book about bomb making we found in a car she once rode in.
It would have nothing to do with whether she pulled a trigger on the turnpike, but it would prejudice the jury irreversibly.
Of course. So it's a double bind. It's a perfect trap. Option A, stay silent, let the police and prosecution tell their story unchallenged, and look like a sullen, guilty criminal.
Or, option B, speak your truth, explain the political context, and be branded a terrorist by your own admission in front of the jury.
The result is that the political reality is surgically stripped away, leaving only the criminal framing.
The jury is not allowed to see the war. They're only allowed to see this one, isolated casualty.
The court procedure itself acts as a sanitizing filter. It ensures that the state's simple narrative, she's a bad person who shot a cop, is the only story that fits within the narrow rules of evidence.
And even when the physical evidence didn't fit that narrative, the narrative still won.
It's incredible. The main witness against her, the other trooper, Trooper Harper, admitted on the stand that he had lied in his initial reports. He changed his story multiple times about seeing a gun in her hand.
The forensic evidence showed Assata had no gunpowder residue on her fingers.
And neurologists testified that her clavicle was shattered and her median nerve was severed by the first shot that hit her, meaning she would have been physically incapable of pulling a trigger.
But it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. In the theater of the absurd, the cop killer character that had been established by the media for years was more real to that jury than the paralyzed woman sitting in front of them.
She was convicted,
Yeah.
sentenced to life plus 33 years. And this moves us to the final stage of the machine, part 4, incarceration.
And if you thought the analysis was deep before, this is where she hits the absolute bedrock of the American economic system.
It happens with a moment of constitutional realization.
It's amazing. She's in prison, and she's being ordered to work, I think it was cleaning or kitchen duty, for pennies an hour. And she rebels. She tells the matron, "I'm not working for free. Slavery was outlawed in 1865.
And the system, the prison matron, effectively laughs in her face.
So she goes back to her cell, and she gets a copy of the Constitution, and she reads the 13th Amendment. And we all know the first part. We learned it in school. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States.
But we always forget the comma. We forget the clause that comes after.
Except as a punishment for crime whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted.
The exception clause.
And she said it hit her like a lightning bolt. The 13th Amendment didn't abolish slavery.
It nationalized it.
It nationalized it. It took the power to enslave people away from private plantation owners and gave that power exclusively to the state.
And suddenly, the whole prison system looks completely different through that lens.
It's not a correction facility. It's a factory. It's a plantation. She starts listing all the jobs that prisoners do. They make license plates, they build furniture, they do data entry for corporations, they farm the land.
She calls it a profitable business, and she starts to map the geography of it.
Right. Who goes to prison? Overwhelmingly black and brown poor people from the cities.
And where are the prisons built? Overwhelmingly in rural, poor, white communities.
So you are literally taking bodies from the inner city and shipping them to the countryside to act as the economic engine for a dying rural town.
The prison provides jobs for the guards. It provides construction contracts for the local crews. It provides food contracts for the local vendors.
It is a direct economic transfer. It is the extraction of value from the criminal class to sustain the rural working class.
This is the seed of what Angela Davis, who wrote the foreword to the book, calls the prison industrial complex.
Shakur realizes that if the prisons were to close, these towns would collapse economically. The system needs a constant supply of prisoners, which implies that crime must be maintained at a certain level to keep the factory running.
But the containment isn't just economic, it's psychological. It's designed to break the human spirit. The descriptions of her time in solitary confinement they're harrowing.
She spent over a year in the basement of the Middlesex County Jail for Men.
Let's just linger on the sensory details there for a second. It was a men's prison. She was the only woman there. She was kept in a basement cell.
No sunlight. It was damp, infested with ants and centipedes. She describes the silence not as an absence of noise, but as a physical weight pressing down on her.
And the petty, constant cruelties. The lights kept on 24 hours a day, so she lost all sense of time. The food arriving cold and unrecognizable, and the constant surveillance.
There's one particularly violating scene she describes where she needs medical attention. Or maybe she's about to meet with her lawyer, and the female guards demand a vaginal search.
For which there's no security reason at all. She's been in total isolation.
It is purely an exercise in power. It is the state saying, we own every single inch of you, inside and out. We can do whatever we want.
And she refused. She fought them physically, even with her injuries. And that resistance is really the core of her character throughout the book. They tried to strip her of her identity.
They called her by a number, they called her a thief and a bandit.
But she flips that script in one of the most powerful passages of the entire autobiography.
I love this analysis. She's sitting in that solitary cell, and she asks herself, who are the real bandits?
She writes, "They call us thieves and bandits.
Yeah.
Yet it is not we who ripped off billions of dollars every year through tax evasions, illegal price fixing, and embezzlement."
She points to the corporate elite. She points to the politicians. She says, it is not we who are robbing Africa, Asia, and Latin America of their natural resources.
She completely reframes the definition of crime. She argues that a kid stealing a television is a crime, but a corporation stealing the water rights of an entire developing nation is just called business.
A landlord charging predatory rent that forces a family into homelessness is just market forces.
She has that line, every time we pay our rent, the landlord sticks a gun into our ribs. It's just a metaphorical gun, an economic gun, but it's backed up by the very real guns of the police who will come to evict you.
And that is the crisis in perception, right there in a nutshell. She refuses to accept the state's dictionary. She argues that the law is not some objective moral compass.
It's a tool.
It's a tool used by the big bandits to police the little bandits. The only real difference is who holds the pen that gets to write the laws.
So we've journeyed through the entire machine. We've seen the inputs in education and race. We've seen the suppression through policing and media. We've seen the courtroom theater, and now the prison factory.
So now let's zoom out. Part 5, systems mapping. How does this all fit together?
If we look at Assata as a systems map, what do we see?
You see a closed loop. It's a perfectly self-perpetuating machine. Let's walk through it.
Okay.
First, you have the legislators. They create laws that disproportionately criminalize poverty and political dissent.
Then you have the police and intelligence agencies. Their job is to enforce those laws and, more importantly, to neutralize any threats to the existing order. That's KIO-INTEL-PRO.
Third, the media comes in. They amplify the police narrative. They create the monster image, the cop killer, that justifies the harsh enforcement in the eyes of the public.
Then you get to the courts, and their role is to act as the filter. They sanitize the process, strip away all the political context, and officially ratify the police action by producing a legal criminal.
And finally, you have the prisons. The prisons consume that criminal, containing the body, extracting economic value through labor, and, crucially, justifying the budget for more police and more prisons to catch more criminals.
And the output of that prison then feeds right back into the beginning of the system. The more dangerous criminals you have locked up, the more you can tell the public you are unsafe.
And the more money you can demand for police, for surveillance, for more prisons, it creates its own demand.
Which helps explain the persistence, right? It helps explain why Assata Shakur is still on the most wanted terrorist list today. Why is there a $2 million bounty on a grandmother living in Cuba?
Right. I mean, she's essentially retired from that life. She writes poetry. She is not an active threat to anyone. So why does the state care so much?
Because she represents a glitch in the system.
She's an error message. She escaped. She broke out of a maximum security prison in 1979 and fled to Cuba, where she was granted political asylum. She beat the system.
She is a living, breathing proof that the system is not omnipotent. It is not infallible.
Precisely. As long as she is free, the state's narrative of total control is punctured. She is a symbol of defiance that they cannot tolerate. And as Angela Davis notes in the foreword, the system needs enemies.
To justify its own existence.
To justify the billions of dollars spent on militarized police, on global surveillance, on the prison industrial complex, you need a terrorist. You need a cop killer. If they didn't have Assata Shakur to put on a poster, they would have to invent someone just like her.
She is structurally necessary as a villain for the state's narrative.
Just as she is structurally necessary as a hero for the counter-narrative of the movement.
And that really leaves us with the big, heavy question, doesn't it? The book forces you to ask. If this entire system is designed to protect property, to maintain a racial and economic hierarchy, and to generate profit from containment, is it broken?
We always hear people talking about the broken criminal justice system.
But from the perspective laid out in this book, Shakur would argue it isn't broken at all.
It is functioning exactly as it was designed to. It is delivering order. It is delivering profit. It is delivering control. The only thing it isn't designed to deliver is justice.
And that is the distinction. Law versus justice. Order versus justice.
That is the crisis.
And we are going to leave you with that thought to reflect on. A huge thank you to the author of our source material, Assata Shakur, for Assata, an autobiography, and also to Angela Davis and Lennox Hines for their vital contributions to the text.
We really do strongly encourage you to read the book for yourself. We've done our best to analyze the structure, but the poetry, the humanity, and the powerful voice of the author are things you have to experience firsthand. Go to your library, get a copy.
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis and Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon.
For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.